Yeah, we're back. Last segment of the night. Um, Definitely wanted to take out some time and honor some of the legends that have passed, either recently or anniversary wise, around this time in previous years. Some really strong, impactful people in both sports and culture, and we just wanted to take some time, kind of reflect on them. Married Man Rob is the biggest Kobe fan that I know personally. The 1 year anniversary of Kobe passing tragically just passed a few days. Well, yesterday when we were recording, but by the time you see this, a few days prior. So just want to get into some just honoring the impact of these legends, starting with Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, man. Like you said, definitely my favorite athlete growing up. He wasn't just my favorite player, like just across all sports, and just it's so surreal that it was a year ago today, or a few days ago, that like it's really surreal to see his impact is still resonating throughout the NBA. You saw a lot of players, just posting whether it's old pictures, whether it's Trey Young hitting a three and throwing up the 2-4, and like Kobe was one of those people that like if even if you didn't like him, you respected him, and there was definitely something that you can learn or take and apply to your own life, whether you were an athlete or not. And I think that's the biggest thing about the Mamba mentality that the world resonates, and why him passing away was so impactful and like really lets people know that, like, hey, you really got to go hard every single day because you really don't know when your last day is. And for me, that was probably like one of the biggest things that I took away from Kobe. I was listening to one of his podcasts recently with Knuckleheads, and literally he said like the reason why I wear number 24 is philosophically that like I only have 24 hours in a day, so I got to make the most out of it. And like that resonated with me because it's like, in my situation, whether it's through the hard way or dealing with whatever situation I have going on in my life, like you gotta seize that moment because you don't know when it's gonna come again, and really just give it your all. So man, I could go on forever about Kobe, but I'm gonna just say, man, we miss you, Bean, and listen, it sucks having you gone, dog.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last year when we spoke about this, I spoke about the moment that I actually started respecting Kobe as the player. I was not you could say Kobe hater, but I had other favorite players that were way higher than Kobe. I definitely criticized Kobe a lot. So I would be on the hater side prior to that game that I spoke about. But I know another thing that when you talk about the impact that Kobe has, speak about Mamba mentality, and that is not just a basketball term anymore. That's a lifestyle. That's a you talked about the 24 hours in a day. For those who don't know, the black mamba is the most poisonous snake and also one of the most aggressive snakes in the world. And you talk about seizing opportunity, seizing your moment. I think Kobe was a great example of that. Even after as soon as he left the court, I mean, he's getting Grammys. Like we didn't even know he was dropping anything, and he's getting those type of awards. So the impact that he had on the players, the impact that he has on communities is just it's still very much felt. Um, and like you said, Rob, I can go on talking about the impact that he has on others, but I think it's just important to remember him for all of what he was because he was a great individual to mirror uh, achievement behind. So big up to Kobe.
Yeah, but Bean was he was different. And we talk about excellence in our meetings, in our board meetings, and Kobe's mentality was nothing about excellence, and he is not going to settle for anything less. And excellence doesn't mean um, like going above your capacity, but just being the best version of yourself every single day. That 24, right? That 24 hours. What are you doing with it? How are you using it? And that mentality to just strive for that and that to be a barometer on a daily basis and to reach that on a daily basis is the Mamba mentality. And that has transferred over into everything that he's done, and even with the Mamba Academy and the players that came out of that, and RRP to the young ladies who passed on that plane, and the coaches that were there with him in the helicopter crash, because they were influential as well. And it was just a sad day in sports. But as with anything with sports, we turn tragedy into positivity, and we use it and to remember the people for what they stood for, and what Kobe really stood for was equality of the game of basketball. And I think that his next step, if he didn't pass away, was to improve the WNBA game. And you can hear about his impact with the NBA players, how they speak about Kobe, and how he's brought more attention to their movement, inequality, and payment and opportunity. And that's an amazing thing. There's a story, and I was listening to it, that the WNBA commissioner, her second week on her job, Kobe requested from Davis third. I mean, not from Davis third, out of Silver. He's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about the NBA. Get me on a phone with the WNBA commissioner. And they spoke directly. That's the type of impact Kobe had. He was a hands-on guy behind the scenes, but if he cared about something, then he would do his best and his darndest to make sure that he seen it happen. And I think that's the impact that he has for us, and that's the example that he's going to leave for everybody else to watch and look up to. So, we miss your mom.
And moving on to someone else, as legendary as Kobe, one of our forefathers in the game of baseball,
Yeah, man.
and just in the game of being treated a certain way, I guess in the athlete realm of things. Hank Aaron, at one time the home run record breaker, 755, I believe that was, right? 755. Broke the record at 715. Record was 714 prior from Babe Ruth. Hank Aaron, one of the best baseball players they were, just passed away, 86 years old, I believe. And talking about his impact of the game, me and you, John, we had a really in-depth conversation with a few other family members about mental fortitude, and I wanted you to kind of bring that to the show when it came to some of the things that Hank Aaron was dealing with.
Oh yeah, man. I was listening, and first of all, Hank Aaron was a heck of a baseball player. He never hit over 50 home runs, bro, in one season.
So that means he was extremely
Like,
consistent.
model of consistency, bro. 44, 45, 39, 28, 44, 45, 28. Like, his numbers was crazy. I think he started his career in 1954 and ended it in 1976. We was talking about over 22 years of baseball. His last 40-year year was in 1973. So dude was doing it to the very end. And you talk about mental fortitude. For me, it was just like he came up in that era, like pretty much right after Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, and he played for the Braves, who were starting in the north, and then they migrated to the south. And he's in Atlanta at that. And the stories that I've heard about the death threats, that he was getting 300 death threats a day. And you have to go out there and play baseball. And on top of that, exceed in baseball, hit 40 home runs, be the home run king, have to talk to the press and the media. You can't really say what you want to say, right? Because you're under the spotlight. So we talk about mental fortitude and the ability to operate under pressure. And I'm talking about, like, it's a different type of pressure than just the media being on your back. But if people know where you live and you're getting death threats to your house, that's a different type of pressure that you're facing. So for him to exceed under those things, I just think that speaks more to the greatness than the 755 home runs that he hit. And I think a lot of athletes owe a lot to him when it comes to where African American athletes are today. He also was breaking the barriers, saying that he should be an owner of the baseball league, and actually wanted to own a minor league team. And The MLB was against it, but he stood on his own too and said, "Nah, this is what I think is deserved to me, and why can't I? I have the money. You know what I mean? I've been in the league, so he's really a frontierman, and like I can't explain how much appreciative I am for him for breaking that open for me, because that doesn't just transcend in sport as an athlete, but it also transcends for sports as analysts. Thank you, Cameron.
Yeah, my small piece on Hank is just I remember in relation to those death threats, baseball is America's game, and if we're talking about America and history, then we have to remember where we were as a country in the year that he started. Granted, they were in Milwaukee, the Braves, but half the teams weren't, and they were in the South. And in the 50s and 60s, we're talking about Jim Crow South. Him having to do a lot other things. I mean, we've seen them in the Jackie Robinson movie. We've seen these things on TV and in history books and such natures. But to live through that, to maneuver through that could not have been easy. And he's breaking the most beloved record in the most historic game.
America's game.
So I don't know how more I have to say how people would feel about this.
Right.
You're talking 300 death threats a day. So for him to still stand up and say, you know what, I'm going to continue to be the best me. I'm going to continue to play 140 games a season, regardless. And when the time comes, I'm going to do what's necessary. I'm willing to believe that people were pitching away from him because they didn't want him to break someone like Babe Ruth's record in the first place. So maybe he would even have more. I remember Barry Bonds, who has the record now, being pitched around almost seasons at a time. And I wonder if that's what it looked like back then as well. Like he had to seek out these home runs. Like even he was hitting 40 in a season. Like they weren't easy. I'm pitching to you like I would pitch to anybody in the lineup, pitching around you all game. And I will look that up when I look at his walks. But go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, man. Hammer and Hank was definitely an icon. One of the things that I appreciate about him, is that like after he was the home run king, like he still took the time to give back to the community, to talk to young men and to share his experiences and to let us know that, hey, this is what I was going through, but hey, look where I'm at right now. And that's something that I like to like hold my hat on, that like I feel like in my life I feel like one day a little boy's gonna look up to me and be like, yo, he looks like me. And I'm gonna say, yeah, you can do it too. And for Hank Aaron to kind of set that trend from the very beginning is very impactful for me. So just I don't want to go too much on what you all said, but just like really try to imagine getting like death threats in him, and like so for him to perform, dealing with all the adversity that he was dealing with, and for that longevity and consistency and like the long span of it, the over scheming of it is very impressive, man. Shout out to Hammer and Hank.
Moving on, Larry King, one of the most prominent newscasters. I guess I would say podcast before it was an actual thing. Larry King Live, right in your face, have basically anybody. It was the thing to be on Larry King. Me growing up as a journalist, definitely looked at Larry King's mannerisms. His voice quality was amazing. But just the way that he carried himself and the way that he was able to ask the question, sit in your face and wait for an answer. Reminds me of how I kind of treat people on Three the Hard Way sometimes. Like, I'm going to ask my question and you on the spot. You hear it's Larry's Three the Hard Way live, baby. But and I'm not going to say that I followed him tooth and nail, but he was definitely one of the people that when you're in the path that I'm in, career path that I'm in, he's definitely someone that you look towards, grab some tidbits from. You definitely know of him and what he was capable of. So, for me, that's the impact of someone that I wasn't even really following closely. But when you're that big, you kind of become immortal in a sense, and you branch out and you touch people that you don't even know that you're really touching. So big shout out to Larry King for that. Yeah, guys.
Yeah, man, Larry King. Like, anytime you got a show named after your legit name, you know you made it. And this is kind of like a reoccurring theme that, like, a lot of these guys that we're talking about, they had like long-term excellence. You know what I mean? Larry King's been on TV since before we were born. Like, you know what I mean? And for him to still continue his career, still have the excellence, still have the candid conversations, and still be relevant in today's world, even though it's changed from when he started. That's commendable too. So we're definitely going to miss Larry King. I don't know if there's going to be anybody that could replace him, but sometimes legends aren't meant to be replaced; they just need to be remembered.
Yeah. The legend never died, bro. And I think Kobe, wrapping that back into the Kobe thing. Um, Larry King, his diversity of guests on his show, I think, kind of made it for me. Like, he wasn't afraid to, bring people on the show to speak on certain topics where other people during his time might have been like, yeah, I'm a pass.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, like, Larry King's gonna have you on the show. They're gonna have the conversation. So that is respected because not everybody knows how to have those conversations. And we know, as a society, that there has to be conversations that are broke. There are conversations that nobody wants to talk about, but needs to be talked about. And that's why Larry King was important, because he would be the one answering those questions and bringing it to the world at that time, because we didn't have internet when he was up, right? It was literally like the late night show where all the juiciest stuff was at. And he had that time frame, and he was the king of late night TV at one point. So, shout out to Larry King Live, man, and RIP to you, and thank you for the memories. And legend never died, man.
Speaking of legends never dying, this last person that we're gonna mention played all of our legends, from the fictional Wakanda legend that may be fictional, but touched and sat in the hearts and souls of so many African American, Black, and other culturally Black children. And then, from Jackie Robinson to James Brown, this man covered some of the most iconic roles in our history. And let's be honest, this is how history is taught to most children nowadays. I mean, our history books aren't really textbook. Our kids aren't in the textbooks like that. Our kids are watching movies. They're watching videos. They're watching historic things that's being put in front of them. And I think Chadwick Boseman did a really good job of bringing some of these historic plights to light, and in only the way his charisma could do it. I watched him play so many different roles in such a short period of time, and they were so different, yet he was able to pull them all together and have that savviness about him that just really made you dive into the story. And man, Chad was dope to me, and I'm sad that he's gone, but he definitely has impact on a lot of young children. I mean, just the Wakanda role alone. Uh, Prince King, excuse me, King T'Challa. Yeah, I was missing his name. King T'Challa. King T'Challa. Enough is an immortalizing role. So big shout out to Chadwick Boseman and what he's done for our culture and our communities, as well as filling the box offices, everyone else.
Wakanda forever, man. He definitely inspired a lot of kids and a lot of people in his generation. And representation matters, and that's what Chadwick Boseman did to us. He brought the culture together, especially during these trying years of the last 4 years. It was beautiful to see that.
Yeah, man, Chadwick's story is definitely inspirational. Just doing what he did while battling cancer is even that much more admirable. And like you said, Ty, he's definitely a role model and like someone that people look up to from all types of backgrounds. And just him being who he was and not letting his cancer get the best of him so he could inspire us and the rest of the world is super impactful to me too, man. So like, Wakanda forever, dog. Definitely miss you too, homie.
Absolutely. And we kind of out because we are out of time. Thank you for watching. Again, honoring the impact of those fallen. We gave you guys some boxing information. We gave you guys some football, some basketball. So we'll see you next week. Anything before we go, fellas?
Man,
We're not talking about the Knicks. We're not talking about the Knicks. We're not talking about the Knicks.
I'm
We're not talking about the Knicks. We're not talking about the Knicks.
I'm quiet.
they need to change that Pro Bowl format and make it rough touch or something. Tired of this. I don't want to see nobody play Madden.
Yeah, the Pro Bowl is a dub. The skills challenges be lit, but I don't know if they're doing that this year.